Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Alison and
Hello.
Paige Talk Canada Reads. We're back for the next episode of the next book on the shortlist, which is A Minor Chorus by Billy-Ray Belcourt. Very excited to read this one, talk about this one. I read an ebook. No, I listened to the audiobook. Just kidding. Paige, how did you read this book?
I did the ebook.
Awesome. Okay, so two different experiences. And so what we'll do is I'm going to give a bit of a spoiler-free overview of the book, talk a bit about the author and the champion, and then we'll do a little don't continue if you don't want spoilers thing, and then we'll get into our thoughts about the book. Ready, Paige? Ready to
Let's
go?
do it.
All right, so let's get into it. So Billy-Ray Belcourt is an author from Driftpile Cree Nation, which is in Northwest Alberta, which is where A Minor Chorus is set as well. How I know Billy-Ray Belcourt is from his book, A History of My Brief Body. Have you read any of his books before?
That's the one that I've read as well.
Okay. That one won a bunch of awards, and I think a few of his books have for sure. But he's currently based in Vancouver. He's a professor at UBC in Indigenous creative writing. And yeah, he's probably best known for that memoir. He really likes to write in a very poetic way and often like in a memoir kind of way. Like A Minor Chorus isn't a memoir, but obviously it's about the same place that the author grew up in, which I thought was interesting. And yeah, he's authored 6 books and he writes a lot about queer Indigenous communities and experiences. And then the champion for Canada Reads who chose A Minor Chorus is Ella Maya Tailfeathers, who I was reading a bit about. She does a lot of stuff. She's a writer, director, producer, actor. She's a member of the Kainai First Nation and is Sami from Norway and currently based in Winnipeg, which is cool because
Nice.
that's where I currently live.
That's cool.
And one of the reasons why she loves books is she used to move around a lot as a kid. So she takes a lot of comfort in books. They kind of kept her company growing up. I think she went to like 11 different schools or something like that.
Oh my God.
She's also voiced audiobooks. I don't know. I know you've read Catherine Evermet before, but she voiced the audiobook for Real Ones, which is, I think, the third in the
Okay.
series of like The Break, and then there's the
Okay,
second
yeah, I
one.
haven't read that one.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, so I thought that was cool.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, she's admired Billy-Ray Belcourt for a long time. Actually, one of her feature films is named after one of the author's essays. So
Right.
kind of a
Yeah.
natural choice there.
It makes sense that like she would automatically kind of pick this book. I'm not sure if like because there was that like podcast that had all the 5 champions on it, and the host of the podcast asked a lot of them like how they decided on the book they decided on, and I feel like she touched upon how Billy Ray Belcourt's like her favorite author or one of her favorite authors. I get it. If there was a list of like 15 books and like one of my favorite authors was on it, there's a high chance I would pick it, even also to have like the body of work behind them as like
Hmm.
supporting the book in a sense. So it makes sense
Yeah,
that she would
and
pick
I
it.
think it'll make her a good champion for the novel as well.
Yeah,
Especially because when you love an author, like, you have like a really strong connection there.
yeah, yeah, like a history of enjoying her
Hmm.
work. Yeah. So a minor chorus, to give like a non-spoiler, like brief idea of what it's about. It's like about this. There's a narrator who who's living in like a university town or university city in Alberta. Not even sure if it's ever named the city, or I don't even think
I
it was
don't know.
Edmonton, but
I was
somewhere
wondering if
near
it was
there.
Edmonton. Yeah.
And then they go back to he goes back to his hometown and just kind of ends up having all these conversations with people from like his past. So, that's the book. It's under 200 pages.
It's short.
It's not a long read. Yeah, so probably now is when we'd start talking about spoilers. So, you know,
Spoiler alert.
spoiler alert. So pause now if you don't want to hear that. So yeah, pretty much if I'm going to explain the book a little further, like more of a summary of it. It's almost like there's probably like maybe 8 different people that he ends up talking to, and I think it's kind of like each one is a chapter
Mm.
essentially, or each one's like a section of the book. And again, the book's 200 pages, so it's not super long, and each is sort of this like conversation he has with different people. Some of those people are like his childhood friend Jack, his great aunt, Jack's grandmother, who else? Like, oh, this like man in the community who
Michael?
is like Michael, who's like,
Yeah.
I think he's not out, but he kind of is out, and
Hmm.
he's like this older like man that he kind of looked up to, and so yeah, it's just sort of you know, it is written like a memoir. Like I actually like I started reading this and I was like, is this a memoir? I like looked
Mhm.
it up. So I was like, I just wanted to know if it was like actual memoir of the author. It's not, but it really is written in a way that is very real. Yeah. So
A good way of
what
saying
would
it.
be some of your like overall thoughts just to start on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think firstly, the writing is beautiful and poetic and amazing. I mean, when someone's able to use words like that, it is just like mind blowing because it is not within my skill set. It's not a style that I typically pick up. I will admit, I picked up A History of My Brief Body, tried to read it, but I couldn't get into the style of writing, and that's not to say that the book isn't amazing, but
Mhm.
not something I go towards, but I can appreciate the artistry of it. And what I did like about this book is I found myself wanting to write down a lot of the quotes in the book. I thought that was just like a really like great play on words and just the using the lens of colonialism and queerness and being indigenous. It was a really like deep kind of dive into that lens and the layers of that. So I think uh I think it was good. It was like a push to read something a little different for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are kind of my initial thoughts. What about you?
Yeah, I'm definitely like very poetic. Um very like smart book. It felt like, I need to use my brain to understand it at
Yeah.
times. Um And, I was initially gonna do the audiobook because I just wanted to kinda do some audio, some
Mm.
non-audiobook for hand reads, but, just from the library, I just got the ebook first, so I was like, "Okay, I'll do the ebook." And I was actually kinda glad I did the ebook because there were times where I, like, reread a sentence a few times to, like, fully let it sink in, and I
That
think
was
if
the
I had
hard
just done the
part with the audio.
audiobook, I think I might have just let it continue, and I wouldn't have, like, gone back to listen to sentences again. So I
I found
actually
myself
am,
going
like
back, but it was really annoying, honestly. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, if you're like, not right at your phone or something, you're walking around your house or you're up for a walk in the cold and your hands are cold and you don't wanna, like, touch your phone or something.
yeah.
Like, yeah, so I was actually kinda glad, I think if I was gonna recommend this book or something, I would maybe sort of push them towards, like, the ebook or the physical book just because of that. Um, or even the physical book if you're someone who likes to annotate books, I think that could be, like, good
Hmm.
for this because, yeah, there were a lot of, like, good quotes, but there were definitely some sentences I had to read a few times to understand, which maybe, like, is nice, but it could be a bit of a con of this book where it was, like, um, literary and smart, so it was a little hard to understand sometimes what the author was trying to say. Um,
The author mentioned that, or the narrator mentioned that actually. I don't know if you remember, but the narrator was like, maybe the language I'm using isn't, super accessible, but also I have the right to kind of express myself the way that I
yeah.
want to. So there was kind of an acknowledgement of that, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting, and this person is, yeah, doing their master's, or no, they're starting their PhD, like, thesis, so they're
Yeah.
in that, like, academic, like, world and, literary world, English speaking world, so yeah, yeah, so they did I remember they mentioned that, so, yeah, so starting to think about, like, canneries, that's why we read this book, is this a book every Canadian should read? I think that's, like, hard to answer for this one a little bit for me,
Yeah.
because I think I think a major con of it is just how I guess maybe it's not a major con, but I'm not sure if it's a super accessible book as far as like, understanding what they're saying, but at the same time, I think a lot of the themes that they talk about in the book are
Yes.
really important and really a every Canadian would benefit from understanding these themes. Um, so what would be like, a couple themes or like theme or two that would like stand out? I mean, you kind of already mentioned some of them.
Yeah, I think for me, the one that stood out was the nature theme when the narrator was in Jasper National Park and was just visiting, and I think visiting a residential school
Yeah.
site. And there was this white woman there who was like, "What are you doing here? I'm gonna call the police for trespassing." And just like that is so representative of the
Mm-hmm.
way that
Yeah.
Indigenous peoples are treated in national parks or in nature on their
Yeah.
own land or on some
Yeah.
very sacred sites. And so that was
Yeah.
like a my God moment. Like that's like is ridiculous
Full
and
for
still
sure.
happens.
Yeah.
I thought that was and there were a number of themes around nature. I think he went camping with his mother.
Yeah.
And I think there was a lot of imagery going from Edmonton to his home in
Yeah.
Alberta. And yeah, I think that, and there was a quote that's kind of like a little bit related to when he was going home. I'll just say it because I wrote down a few quotes, but
Mm-hmm.
the quote was, "Train tracks look less like sutures and more like wounds. It all looked so ordinary and Canadian, and because of this, it haunted me." He's like going
Mm.
home and looking at the train tracks, and I guess they're disrupting the nature and their
Mm.
land. And yeah, that stood out to me. How about you? I know that you
Yeah. Definitely like grief as a theme for sure. Like all of these people that he interacted with and sort of interviewed had been through some sort of grief, like a
Mm.
loss, have had hard periods of their lives. So that definitely that was like the one of the number one themes that stood out to me the most, which I think also relates to the title of the book. I think I was waiting to understand the title a bit better for most of the book, like the title of a minor chorus. Like he never specifically explained the title. The narrator kind of left that up to us. So, but I think
Did you
like
look it up?
minor
I did.
chorus. Pardon?
Did you look it up?
There was no like the author that from what I could tell couldn't comment or
I
never
did.
comment.
I found the author commenting about it. So yeah, why don't you tell me your thoughts on the title, and then I'll talk about what the author said about the title.
Yeah, I definitely thought like the big thing was like chorus is like a group of people, and the
Uh-huh.
idea of like a group of people kind of saying the same thing, or if you're in a choir or chorus, you're all connected, you're all together. So like a chorus, and then minor in the sense of the minority, maybe minority of people, or you know, even minor as like a minor key in music is sad. It's like sad, grief. Yeah, so that's what
Yeah.
I thought. And what did the author say?
I mean, that's pretty much what the author said, honestly. The book was not about an individual, but a community of people, a community of people who have like their stories have kind of been shoved to the wayside, especially in the face of like a very colonial dominant narrative. So it's kind of bringing that to the forefront. Those stories to the forefront to show that despite all this grief, there is joy and resistance in telling these stories. So that's what the author said
Yeah,
when they did
similar.
an interview.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
basically it. Well done on that analysis.
Yeah, and another thing that stood out of one of the stories that stood out the most to me was Jack. Jack was like a pretty as far as there are a lot of characters, he was kind of maybe slightly more of a main
I
character.
think so.
So he is the cousin of the narrator. They grew up together. I think they're like childhood friends and they kind of drifted apart. So Jack kind of ended up basically living with his grandmother. And then he got into drugs and would kind of be out all night and his grandma just tried to get him to stay home. And then he ended up having some run-ins with the police and he was in jail at the time that or prison at the time that our narrator goes back to his hometown. I believe, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
he is in prison, yeah. And I think the narrator visits him in prison.
Yeah.
Does that sound right? Yeah. So this kind of remind me of something that I was aware of is that Indigenous people in Canada are overrepresented in prisons in Canada, like the Canadian prison system. And I was aware of that, but I wasn't, so I decided to kind of look up some and more information on this because I was like, I knew that, but I just wanted to see like some articles and even Stats Can has like articles, not really commenting on it, just more like this percentage and this percentage. It wasn't like explaining
And it's
anything.
ironic that the Canadian government is
It is
posting about it.
ironic.
Yeah, right. Because the
It's
problem is
really ironic.
colonial
But
institution.
yeah, but it's a at least we
Yep.
yeah, so it's there. So if you Google this kind of person comes up. But so Indigenous people make up about 4% of Canada's population, and yeah, as of like 2021 makes up 28% of the inmate population. So 7 times the amount. So that's huge. That's really huge. And it's skewed more towards Indigenous women. It's a
Hmm.
higher rate for Indigenous women than Indigenous
Hmm.
men. And, you know, so then I started to think, and I did looking up like why this is. And there's several factors. It's very complex, but I mean, history of colonialism, intergenerational trauma, systemic racism, and a lot of over policing of Indigenous people. So in over policing where even just citizens like policing when the main character was in Jasper Park, the white woman who was threatening him for just being outside
Yeah.
a closed residential school. And then the police presence on the reserve where Jack and his grandma lived. And then also just like, and from what I found online, over sentencing of Indigenous people. So when they're, you know, arrested and they go for, sentencing, they tend to have longer sentences than
Hmm.
non-Indigenous people. So definitely something to like spread the word about and awareness.
Yeah.
And
It's like a lot of
like,
racist systems that are leading to like
yeah,
a lot of like, yeah, exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, like current
Representation. Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely like being able to like let more people know about this and
Hmm.
yeah, the first step of making a change is like being aware. So yeah, I just definitely wanted to talk about that because that's what I was thinking about, and that was mentioned a few times in the book as far as the prison system. Yeah, so
Do
that
you think
is,
it was like, do you think these themes, like, do you find that like, that kind of theme around nature and all those other things, do you think they were talked about more implicitly or do you think it was explicit? Do you think in order to fully take advantage of this book or get what you want out of this book, like, do you need to think more deeply and kind of draw some connections? I can't remember if it was
yeah,
mentioned explicitly.
I think some of it was explicit. Definitely not all that I just talked about wasn't explicit at all. I didn't
Yeah.
find it was more explicit, like the scene where our narrator's in Jasper Park and he's being harassed. That was more obvious to me. But
Yeah.
even just the fact this book's under 200 pages kind of implies as
Yeah.
well there's a lot of you need to, use your brain, you need to use your imagination, you need to connect the dots, and you need to maybe do your own research afterwards.
Yeah.
So, that's a good and bad thing because, do we want the authors explaining everything to us? Maybe not. But if you were just to read this and put it down and move on, you might not get as much out of it
It's true.
if you didn't try and extend your knowledge a little bit.
Yeah. And how much
Yeah.
is the author's like the author's already inhabiting all these identities, the oppressed identities essentially, and so how much of it needs to be on people like us to continue the thread after we read a book like this. So,
Yeah, totally. But it kind of really, yeah, and it relates back to like every Canadian. A Canadian, if you just sort of have a group of Canadians and you pick one, and should that person read this book? Like, sure. I think so. I just think that, yeah, it's not, I don't know. There's just something about it that I wish it was, I don't know if I just don't know. I think it's like,
would you recommend this book to someone?
it depends. I think it depends. I think if you like the kind of books if you like poetry,
Yeah.
if you like, you know, I don't know how to describe it. It's not necessarily a book I would pick up. Um, but I might recommend it, but I'm pretty stingy with my recommendations though, that being said.
That's
And
fair. Yeah.
I
Except
definitely
for
want to
thriller
like,
recommendations, you're like thriller, thriller, thriller.
yeah,
Uh,
that's true. That's true. Yeah. What do you think? Like, do you think this is a book every Canadian should read?
I mean, I had similar thoughts to you. I don't think it fits that category. I think the themes that we talked about are things that all Canadians need to be educating themselves about and taking action on. But I don't think this book is a book every Canadian should read necessarily.
Mm.
Yeah, I just don't think it's accessible enough in terms of language. I don't want to dock points because it's so beautifully written.
Yeah,
But
that's what like hurts me. That hurts.
it's not, I also felt it is a very character driven novel rather than a plot driven novel.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
if you're
definitely.
looking for like to me, it felt like it was telling a story, but only this much of a story, and I felt like I wanted a bit more.
Yeah, that's what I kind of felt like too. Like just right when you kind of are getting into the meat of these conversations with the characters, it was like the chapter was over, and you're like with Michael's story, I thought I heard that his story was really interesting,
Yeah,
and Jack's, and so I was, you know, wanting more in a
yeah.
way.
I
So,
loved
you
Jack's,
know,
like, the end, I think is where Jack had that long kind of
yeah, yeah,
soliloquy of sorts, but
mhm,
I thought that
yeah,
was one of my favorite parts of the book, probably.
yeah, me too.
Um, yeah.
So yeah, and I don't want to say like, yeah, it is a bit inaccessible. Her language is a bit inaccessible. Yeah, and then the sub theme though, I think it fits maybe a bit better with the sub theme as far as like building bridges to an extent. He's building like half a bridge. Like we were saying, he's not, explicitly explaining things to us, but he's sort of, you know, putting something out there and you have to sort of meet him halfway
Yeah, I
as far
did
as
a
these
bit of, like,
issues.
looking online about what Elamaya was saying about it. Elamaya
Mm,
Telbrother is the champion, and
yeah,
she was talking about how she interpreted the book as, like, the narrator's hometown was kinda these almost, I mean, it's not binary, but there was essentially Indigenous folks and then the RCMP and white folks, and
yeah,
there's this divide between them, and so there's a need to kind of bridge a divide between people of different backgrounds and have an understanding and an acceptance of others. And then the other thing she said was bridging the gap between the author, wanting to be home and feeling a deep sense of belonging to their home, but also feeling
yeah,
very unsafe at home because there's so much hostility towards Indigenous people.
yeah.
And yeah, those didn't immediately come out to me. I mean,
Hmm.
I think it makes sense. It kind of built it wasn't it more like identified the gaps to me. It didn't like be like this is how this book
We
doesn't
can bridge it.
necessarily
There is a
build the
gap. Yeah,
yeah, it identifies the gap and maybe like provides a lens into the narrator's perspective on that gap and what that kind of feels like. But it wasn't like an immediate this fits the theme, but I have a feeling Elamaya is gonna tell us
yeah. How
how
it
it
does
reaches this
gap.
theme.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like, saying it at least gets the conversation started, I think. It can get the conversation started. So
Yeah,
there's just cats like fighting behind me. Hey,
classic.
Lucy. Yeah, so okay, what else I was gonna add to this? So
Any
yeah,
other
we're talking
yeah.
about all of there's like, 6 or 8 or how many characters that our author or narrator goes and meets and stuff. Did you have a favorite? All of those? All the other characters?
Um, I think it was probably Jack. Like, kind of Jack just as a kid wasn't set up for success. Like his parents basically left him and his grandmother tried
Yeah.
his best to raise him and he's growing up in this space that is very difficult and so trying to cope as best that he can and
Yeah.
even though he's trying, he just doesn't have the supports or the tools and ends up where he is and it feels like yeah, it just feels he was a very like complicated character and very I
Yeah.
think the narrator does a good job of making sure that he's seen as human and not just
Yeah.
like another indigenous man in prison.
Yeah. 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 And we could learn about his childhood. So, he's just an innocent child. And we learn more about him, I think, than the other characters for the most part, because we learn about Jack through Jack's grandmother, through her
Yeah,
chapter is pretty much almost all about Jack. And
yeah,
then we learn through Jack's chapter. So I think
yeah.
you like connect with him a bit more. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
And it's sad when like the people in your life, his grandmother really tried her
Yeah.
best to
She did everything she could.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
So, yeah.
and so related to that, I'll have a question for you. So that there's the narrator's character River,
Yeah.
who makes an appearance once in a while, or they text back and forth. And what do you think? Why do you think River was a character there, and what role do you think that they played?
Yeah, I think River was definitely the first part of the book is this like coffee shop meeting that the narrator has with River, their friend River. And River is definitely somebody who the narrator looks up to. a role
Uh-huh.
model. Just the way the narrator talks about River with the way they hold themselves, their confidence, their intellect, and River's at the end, I think, of their PhD,
Uh-huh.
like maybe even finish their dissertation, whereas narrator's kind of at the beginning and is feeling lost and kind of sees that River has already like gone over this big hill.
River knows what they want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
River knows what's up. River also embodies like masculinity and femininity and everything in between. And I
Uh-huh.
think our narrator has a lot of respect for that. So narrator talks about masculinity, like toxic masculinity, and also our narrator talks about like motherhood and femininity. So I think like exploring all of those and having a friend and
Oh, and his
mentor
relationship
that
with his mother. So many,
like
so much, so much stuff. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of that. So I think our narrator, I really like River. River was one of my favorites for sure too. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
almost wish there was more of River in the book.
Yeah.
Like, but
Yeah.
again, that's sort of like the style of this book is sort of, you know, just sort of jumping
Multiple
between
voices.
characters. Yeah. And even like the name River elicits flowing, like graceful, and I kind of like that, you know, free spirited, free, like flowing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was
It's
nice.
interesting how like I've been watching these TikTok trends and about like what's the most gender neutral, non-binary,
Mm.
gender fluid name, and a lot of them are like Fern or like
Yeah, like yeah, I like
nature
that.
related, and so River
Yeah.
right in there. I don't know I don't remember what River's pronouns were or what was used, but
Yeah.
they seemed quite gender fluid. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, um, and then we were talking about how there's all these, you know, chapters and characters, and then the book kind of just it ended with like our narrator kind of I think finishing all the interviews that he wanted to do, and then you
Did he
know it
finish
kind of I, I think so, or like to me it felt like he was like satisfied with what he accomplished at his
it?
trip
Okay. Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
Um, my interpretation of the ending was that yeah he was pretty satisfied, you know, but it was I think he was kind of sort of feeling peaceful. Um,
Yeah.
not sure what the next steps would be. Is he gonna go back to school? Is he gonna do something else? How did you feel about the ending? It was pretty open it.
Yeah, I mean, when the book ended, I was like, kind of disappointed because I was like, oh, that's the ending. And it goes back to what I was saying about how it feels like it's a snapshot of a story rather than a lot of books you
Mm.
kind of expect a beginning and an end. I think it kind of aligns with the general theme of the book in that what you said earlier about the narrator being lost. And so it shows them beginning to kind of get an understanding of the direction they might want to go in, but it's kind of left at the end, kind of unknown because I think to the narrator it's also unknown.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it symbolizes that
Yep.
uncertainty of the path ahead, and so the reader's also left a bit uncertain about that too. So
Yeah.
that was my
Yep.
thought about it.
And
Yeah.
it does align with the rest of the book. And the narrator right at the end was like, I have a clear understanding of
And I
what I
became a
want
New
to
York Times
do,
bestseller.
and I'm gonna do this and this. Goodbye. Like
Yeah.
that wouldn't make sense. So yeah,
Yeah.
I was okay with the ending.
Yeah.
You know, it was quite open ended
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
What do you think about it compared to The Cure for Drowning? What has been your favorite so far of the two? I know it's only been
Yeah,
two.
that will obviously Cure for Drowning.
Yeah, yeah. Last video, I was like, the
Shocker.
best book ever.
Whoa. Plot twist. Yeah, like they're so different.
Yeah,
It
we
is
couldn't have picked
like
up a different second book,
night and
really.
day. Like even like just everything with like it's like even the length of Cure for Drowning was 3 times as long, you know, just structure, the prose, the themes generally were different. I
Yeah,
mean, there was some overlap, but um yeah, I think I prefer Cure for Drowning, and then also I just feel like it fits Canada Reads better.
yeah,
Just in asking those questions of like, should everything read this? Does it build bridges? I
yeah,
think it fits better there. Um, but you know, obviously Minor Course has its you know, things about it that are good. and and a lot of people would enjoy it. And I just
yeah,
don't think it's something that like, you know, I think it's mostly the poetic nature of it that I just have a hard time connecting with. I
Yeah.
think that was just outside of Canada Reads. That's
Yeah.
my like issue with it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Like, I don't read a lot of poetry, but poetry is a beloved thing by so many people. And so, yeah, if I loved poetry, then I'd probably feel more connected to this book in terms of enjoyment. But yeah, I don't read a lot of poetry generally. So, yeah, it's not a bad book by any stretch. It's just not typically what I would read.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But I'm glad I read it for
Yeah,
sure. And I'm glad we had
absolutely.
this discussion and you could
It's one
bring
of the
up
reasons
some
why
like
we do
yeah.
this, to
Yeah.
read books we don't normally pick up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, I did the ebook, Alison did the audiobook. I think both are good.
Yeah, both are
But
good.
yeah, just, yeah. So that's 2 of the 5 Canada Reads books for 2026.
Yeah.
The next one we're reading is also going to be very different again, which
Yes.
is Fun by Ian
Yeah.
Reid.
I think
It's
they're all very
a
different this year, it feels like.
very, very different. And I think, is it thriller slash
Thriller, sci-fi,
dystopian sci-fi?
dystopia,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it also isn't
technology,
like,
thriller.
it's a shorter book as well. I
Yeah.
think it's maybe 200 pages, a
Yeah.
little more than that. So, yep. So that's the next one that's on the list. If you read Minor Course or anything by Billy-Ray Belcourt, like let us know what you think,
Give us your
and
thoughts.
or just let us know in general what you think, and if you're gonna read Foe. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.